Hey guys, Tom Davidson, Landon Hutchison back with Yard Work. Today we've got Bryan from Motus. One of our other episodes, at least once, we're talking with Chad Ranke about Motus, the arm sleeve. This is far more in-depth training piece than what maybe most of us are used to, measuring stress and fatigue on the arm. Landon and I touched base on a lot of our concerns with the shutdown right now and how we keep pitchers' arms in shape and even position players for that matter, but ultimately trying to get us back on the field at some point safely. This is one of those guys that Landon has spoke highly about a number of times. And Bryan, can you kind of give us a rundown of maybe how this product was developed, everything that goes into it, maybe where we're headed from here?
Yeah, definitely. Great to be on the show. The company, Motus was founded in 2010. We had a traditional biomechanical analysis lab down at IMG Academy. So that's using 3D motion capture cameras, typical to what you've seen in like how they create video games. In video game world, the actors have these markers on their body. They perform the movements, and those movements are analyzed. But it's become more popular in the baseball and the sports industry over the last couple of years. But our goal has always been to take that lab experience to the field through wearable tech. So we found that, in the lab, it was a bit of a cumbersome process. It wasn't a true environment for athletes to be wearing compression shorts, 50 markers on their body, and be basically in a batting cage. So teams and, they had a want to be able to capture some of these metrics on the field. So in 2015, we released the product with 9 major league teams during fall instruct. So what it is, it's a pretty small IMU sensor, which sits over your forearm. So it goes within a compression sleeve. So it's a typical sleeve that you see guys wearing every day. So this IMU sensor sits in a pocket over the forearm. And so what our goal was basically to bring that to the field. And in 2016, it was the first piece of wearable tech approved for in-game use. And so what the sensor does, on every throw, it captures 4 metrics. It captures the arm speed, the arm slot at release, the max shoulder rotation. So that's basically the layback here. And then the peak valgus torque. That peak valgus torque has been the most crucial measure that we're capturing, because that allows us to get these workload measurements. And so over time, we've come up with this concept with the help of Dr. Tim Gabbett, who is using acute to chronic workload ratio monitoring in rugby athletes. So they were using GPS units, like Catapult. And what they were doing is they were measuring total body workload for these athletes. And what they found was when an athlete increased his workload by 50% or more, there was a huge rise in injuries, soft tissue injuries. So we applied that concept to baseball. So basically what we do is on every given day, typically you have a pitch count, right? But that's only a small portion of the total throws that these athletes are making. So what we do is we capture every throw, but not only every throw, but the amount of stress that the athlete is placing on their arm. So we're capturing all of that, and we're coming up with this daily workload number. And then we apply that daily workload number to the acute to chronic workload ratio. And the acute number is looking back at the last 9 days. So it's basically a short-term average of that daily workload number. It's almost a level of fatigue. The chronic number is looking back the last 28 days. So it's a level of fitness. How well is the athlete, the pitcher, conditioned? We divide the acute by the chronic and we get this ratio. Through our studies, we found that when an AC ratio is 1.3 or higher, a pitcher is 25 times more likely to get hurt. So we use this ratio to help gauge where a pitcher is, what they can handle. We help to prescribe workload or ultimately throw counts and throwing programs based on this number. So at 1.3, that means a pitcher increases workload over the past 9 days by 30%. Ideally, in season, a guy's about a 1. you're maintaining that same workload throughout the season. There's going to be some spikes based off of higher effort days, game days. Preseason, we want to ramp guys up, but we want to do it safely. So this has really been kind of known just looking at injury data that most injuries occur early in the year. And, a lot of times that's because guys are ramping up too quickly. So with the help of the sleeve, we can help that ramp up, help monitor guys. It's also used in return to throw. Currently when you get an injury, you have Tommy John, everyone's doing pretty much that same cookie cutter program. The issue with that is that, guys are just going to tend to go out there, throw with different intensities, place different stress on their arm. So with the use of the sleeve, they can help monitor that and take that program, but alter it based off some of this objective data.
So that data you're collecting in those 4 points, those 4 measurables, you're getting those onto an app for each individual person. Then you guys are able to kind of construct this game plan on like, hey, look, when you're hitting this many throws, your stress level is too high. We need to maybe adjust here and there.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a good point. So the sensor, there's there's 2 different ways you can use it. You can use it in live mode. So you can connect via Bluetooth to your iOS products, so your iPhone or your iPad, and actually see the throws coming in real time and see what those 4 metrics are. But the more, really how most teams and athletes are using it they'll go out and throw for the day, capture every throw, and then sync the data after the fact. They'll be able to look throw by throw to see what those metrics were. But more importantly, they'll get that AC ratio and see where they're at in terms of, arm condition.
So during this time, would you recommend for athletes to use the live mode more or the post throwing method where they just throw 100 and plus throws and then check in afterwards?
Yeah, so I think it depends. There's some athletes out there that have gotten to the point where they have a true understanding of their workload. They know exactly how many workload units they want to throw each day. And in that scenario, I think for those players, the live mode and being able to check and see exactly where they're at in terms of that number, that's helpful. I think for right now, for the general use case for an athlete that maybe doesn't have a coach prescribing workload or isn't doing, a deep dive into the metrics and kind of developing a custom throwing program, for them, I think it's go out and do your normal routine, come back after the fact, look at your AC ratio, and depending on what you're, maybe what a coach or a program that you're following, then try to alter that program based off of that AC ratio. In talking to the athletes and coaches, and they learn a lot just seeing this information. At first, it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning. It takes some time, some reading and some understanding of what the metrics mean and what AC ratio is. But over time, they get a good understanding of what they're doing, what they need to do.
Now, with this app too, I know just from using it, it's very beneficial to make sure that you tag each specific pitch, especially in bullpen settings. Main reason why that we do it, which I'm assuming this is good for you too, is everyone throws a little different. And I'll ask this question afterwards, but let's say the guy's throwing a slider and you see a spike. Something might be wrong. It could be that his mechanics are off when he's throwing a slider, or maybe it's something to where, in a game, we don't throw 70 of the 100 pitches sliders because you can hurt the guy, little things like that. But have you found one pitch that's a little bit higher stress than others? Is there some data now to collect that would suggest that?
Yeah, so what we found through the data, the most stressful pitch is actually the 4-seam fastball. So the most torque is created with that pitch, and that makes sense. You're throwing it the hardest. That being, I guess if you would ask the average coach, they would probably say the curveball is the most stressful. But actually, curveball shouldn't be as stressful as a 4-seam fastball. But that brings up, you made a good point there. if you are seeing that in the data, if you see that a curveball is more stressful, or even potentially a slider or changeup, you know, there's something off in those mechanics, you know, potentially. You know, that's through our data, time after time, it's been the four-seam fastball that is the most stressful.
So you talked about workload units too. Can you give a quick description of what a workload unit is?
Yeah, so what a workload unit is, and it's something basically that we came up with based off of the amount of stress that's placed on the arm. Now, you're gonna see it like for a major league player compared to a little league or, you know, travel player, the major league athletes are able to handle more stress or torque on their arm. They're bigger guys. So what we've done is we take those torque measurements, which are in Newton meters, and then we normalize it based on the athlete's height and weight. And then it's raised to an exponential power in that the higher effort throws are going to count more than the lower effort throws in terms of those workload units and, you know, coming up with customized throwing programs. Because we know that a guy that's throwing batting practice, you know, he could throw all day long compared to an in-game pitcher that's max effort every pitch, you know, and you can't compare those two throws or even, you know, light catch. So based off of taking those torque measurements, normalizing it with height and weight, you know, and raising it to the 1/3 power, we're able to prescribe these workload numbers and kind of use it across the board. And, you know, what that is if you look at our database, an average throw is maybe about 0.2 workload units. You know, and based off of that information, if we're prescribing the pitcher to go out there and throw 10 workload units total, right, and every throw was the same, then we know that pitcher can make 50 throws that day. They're not, and that's where it's important if you're going to go that in depth to tag that information. So we have teams like, you know, coaches like yourself that are in there that are tagging bullpen, long toss at certain distances, different weighted balls, in-game throws. So now you have you know, going into a game or practice, you have a good idea of what this player can handle and what he should be doing. And we're in the process, and this will be released in May, on our Motus dashboard, we're releasing a program builder, which makes it a lot easier for coaches and athletes to actually go and develop their own throwing program and see what, as a result, their AC ratio is going to be based on that program.
So there's another metric that you guys were talking about a lot too, which has been brought up a lot at conventions and other people like yourself that I've talked to, is fatigue units. So I noticed when we first started using the product, there was one specific pitcher that once he got to around 35-ish pitches, his arm stress would go up because he was just fatigued. He was just wore out. He was done. And you could see it like physically, you know, as a coach, you see sometimes you're like, man, this guy looks gassed. That was kind of that thing. So what are fatigue units, and have you guys seen success with that since you brought that into your formula?
Yeah, so fatigue units is really still new. You know, it was developed, the concept by Dr. Mike Son, and he was looking at only in-game throws using StatCast data at the major league level. But the use of the sensor now allows us to look at all throws across the board. And basically what it is that as a pitcher, you know, from inning, let's just compare his total pitches within an inning. As that pitcher makes more throws within that inning, he's getting more and more fatigued. You know, so a guy that can throw low pitches per inning over a 6-inning start, you know, is going to be potentially a little less fatigued than a guy that makes those same maybe 60 pitches in 2 innings. So that it's really new. There's still on our side, a lot of research to be done with that. But what we found is that, you know, typically in a game, a guy goes out there and pitches, say, on average 15 pitches per inning. He's got that half inning to recover. But what happens, we've seen in warm-ups, is typically a guy goes out, plays catch, goes into a long toss, goes into their bullpen. So we've seen guys are most fatigued actually during warmups. We worked with a pitcher during the fall league where, based off of this information, he changed his pregame routine where he would give himself some time off between, throwing that long toss, getting into the bullpen, doing more about 10 throws at a time, and taking some time off in between, and not doing it just in like a straight or 80 throws kind of rapid fire. So, the kind of the takeaway for our kids that are listening to this is that, give yourself enough time to warm up pregame, because there's not that we have enough information yet, but there's probably something too. Maybe these kids are getting hurt during warmups when they're kind of that rapid fire, potentially making 80 throws in a short time period. We would never want someone to do that on the mound in a game, right? We know when a pitcher, there's some rules in the minor leagues where guys, if they make 30, 35 pitches, they're out of the game no matter what. Might be the first inning. So I think there is some knowledge there at the professional level that, they are aware of that. But this introduction of fatigue units is definitely going to be helpful. That being said, we're definitely early on to, we don't have any exact numbers, but it's really interesting to keep an eye on. And the AC ratio is one part of it, but there's also what's happening interday, what's happening in that day, what's happening over a course of a season as well.
Will you guys
and as we capture more
will you guys be able to use some of this data to maybe break into that discussion on how many throws a kid should make at this age level versus, as they move up in their age division?
I think, over time we will. We're not there yet. I mean, so far what we found is, the most important thing is that these kids, it's not based off of like an inning limit or a throw limit. It's these kids need to be conditioned to throw. They need to throw. And based off of that, if they're conditioned, they're going to minimize their risk of getting hurt. But if we baby kids and then we ask them to throw when we need them because it's an important game, they're not conditioned. And when you're not conditioned, your muscles that are protecting that UCL are going to fatigue, and they're less protective of the UCL.
I know we talked about this yesterday. Landon brought it up that I think there's a misconception on how you get loose to throw. And it's not, the proper way to get loose to throw isn't just to go out and start throwing. There's some warm up, conditioning, and things like that have to go in before you even pick up the baseball and throw. If you're going to go, I think it was Zan yesterday, it was like, hey, if you go squat, you don't just go under there and have 240 on plates and just start squatting. You gotta squat, maybe air squat first. And I think there's some misconceptions on, I warm up a lot, but is your first warm up just picking up a ball and starting to throw or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so important that they do the proper warm up, that active warm up, and so their body's loose, and then starting at, short distances and expanding out and guys, everyone's a little bit different, but at some point you want to lengthen out a little bit, and then get on the bullpen, get the proper reps in there, and then in game. But yeah, that's it's a great point, and I think there's so many misconceptions out there, and just the general population just isn't educated on this enough, and there's things out there to scare the parents or the kids, like with the pitch limits. You have to take X amount of months off, and at this point it's kind of, there's no known evidence behind that. But it's tricky. It's kind of like, we definitely believe in trying to take some time off, but when your season's, so say you're going from summer ball to fall ball, taking that time off can almost be more of a risk than continuing to throw, because then you're starting at zero when fall ball starts up again, and then are you putting yourself at risk when you're playing those games? So it's tough as an amateur athlete because there's so many ups and downs, starts and stops to a season, especially at the college level. You have that, you start in the spring and then you have a little bit like a month off. You have summer ball, month off, you have fall ball. Then you have a winter break and you start in January 15th. You have a month before opening day. So you have to be aware of how you're throwing, when to take that time off. There's no really good time for a college athlete to, like, when do they train and when do they concentrate on training? At least the professionals, they pretty much, go from March until September. They have that off season. They could take a couple months of training, really concentrate on working out, and then start throwing and take that 3 to 4 months to properly ramp up. But our youth athletes don't have that, and
that's our fear right now is these guys, we're just getting ready to go at that high school level because we do all the 14 to 18s, and you shut down their high school season and they just lost, 2 months of baseball, and that usually filters in as soon as they're done. They're on the field with us for summer ball. But then, like you said, we usually take August off, give these guys a little break before fall ball. But yeah, if you go from throwing every 5th day or, once a week for summer ball, things like that, and then you take August off or 3 weeks off, and then you come out, the end of August and start fall ball, and you go like you were at the end of July. That's where you run into a lot of problems for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then for some of our, the high school athletes, the fall has become, kind of crucial, most important. Some of the biggest showcase tournaments are, September, October. So it's a tricky time of year. If anything, those kids should, be limited in the amount of innings, but if you're playing for a really good team and have a chance of winning, the coaches, the organization, they're trying to win, and it's kind of human nature. You want to win, but you got to be smart about it for sure. And I think, if as a whole, if we're able to educate these kids that, if you do have those tournaments coming up, keep throwing. Don't take August as just going to the beach and, just maybe you don't have to throw in game, but you don't want to go down to zero. You don't want to just completely shut down. You have to, keep that momentum going.
Yeah. Bryan, can you give us a quick rundown of your baseball background in general, just like how you got to Motus and whatnot?
Yeah. So I'm from New York. I played collegiately at New York Tech, which back then was a Division I school. It's now a Division II. From there, I was drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I was an outfielder. And then played a year with the Red Sox, all in the minor leagues. Played a couple of years in independent ball, and then when I stopped playing, I opened up a facility. So, I was really into just kind of teaching kids, and but in having that facility, we were fortunate to actually share office space with a technology company. And at that time, it was about 2007. We just saw a need to integrate technology into our lessons. So we actually, and at the time, we were purchasing $15,000 video analysis machines, which is crazy because a few years later, you could do it on your phone. And at that time, we actually, with the help of the technology company, we developed an app, a video analysis app called Scout Cam. We licensed it to Skills. It became Skills Cam. But it really helped us bridge the gap of our lesson business, where we weren't just teaching off of what we were seeing in the cage. We had this app, we had this platform where parents could take video in game. They would send it to our phone. We'd get it. We'd be able to teach the kid based off now what the game swings were. And that would all be archived on this online platform. All stuff that back then was really awesome and new. And now it just, became easier and easier over time. But that was my kind of my intro to technology, working through that, helping develop apps. And just, we always had an eye to try to, increase what we were doing, how to help the athletes. And at that time, Motus was looking to put a lab in a New York facility. So they came in and put their biomechanics lab within our facility. And that's where the relationship started and eventually led to a full-time job. And just something I was passionate about and trying to help the athletes and arm injuries, and I've been with Motus for 6 years now. So we've come a long way, and recently partnered with Driveline, which I think is going to do great things for the product. But yeah, that's where I'm at now, and still trying to kind of conquer, the arm injury epidemic, and kind of, the perception out there in terms of throwing. And it's been an uphill battle, but I think we're making ground. It's taking time, and it just as a company too, you just, you have to get the product to where it needs to be, and that took some time, but we're in a great place right now.
I know the sleeve isn't a one sport thing. I know you guys do football and things like that as well. What's that next phase maybe for Motus on the evolution side of this product? Is it working with Driveline, or are there more things that you guys are really working on to, further enhance what you've got now?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of the other sports, so it could be used for any overhand athlete. So, we work with some NFL teams, some of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, some of the bigger NCAA programs. It's also used in volleyball and even monitor workload in cricket players. But our main focus has been baseball, and especially with Bryans Background, in that we're in the process of just trying to make the data more actionable. So we're gonna continue to work on how we're displaying the analytics, making it easier and easier for everyone to understand. We also want to just continue to enhance the sleeve. Is the sleeve the best option? Are there different form factors that the athlete can wear, that may enhance the overall experience? So kind of just working through some of those things. But I think for right now, it's just really continuing to make this product as good as possible, and educating the people on why it's important to monitor workload and kind of understand it.
Yeah, I think that the transition between, or not transition, but the evolution of baseball, the reason why I feel that players are so young and throwing as hard as they are now and doing the things they are, is because they have all these resources now that we didn't have, back then. And they can, take a video from the side and look and see how their movement patterns are. And, Trevor Bauer and all these guys are literally just putting stuff out there and say, hey, this is like what you need to do. These are the drills. And, Driveline's done a great job. There's a lot of other, places out there that do a really good job of talking about that. But my purpose of bringing this up was, I feel that as a coach in general, the gap is starting to narrow into the youth space. There are still a lot of youth that do not know, or like coaches that don't know just because they don't have enough time to really research it. But, given what we have now with this technology, it would be amazing for, you to be like, hey, you're 4'11" and you weigh this much, you don't worry about number of pitches that you need to throw. This is what you need to do to get to that point, because, this is a healthy way to throw and to be safe. And then it's not, how many throws you made. And another issue with the youth space too is, you'll play a game on Wednesday and you won't play again until next Wednesday, and you'll have maybe one practice on Sunday, and that's the only time they throw, so that's why those are where they are too. So there's just little things that need to be bridged for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, our world has become so structured. These kids, they go to their private lessons, they go to their team practice, the game, and that's it. They don't know what it means to go outside, go to the park with their friends and long toss and throw. And then we've, as society, we want to baby these kids with these pitch counts and all that. But, if you're babying a kid, he's not going to get better. How do you improve your arm strength? You gotta throw. I know for myself, that's one of the challenges I faced as an outfielder was my arm was in high school below average. I had to get better. I would take a bucket of balls and just go to the park and try to throw it out of the stadium, out of the park, 3 times a week. And my arm got to where it was, above average professional arm. That doesn't happen if I'm just, in a structured environment where everyone's trying to baby the arm. So I think that is important to note that, you need to throw, and throwing, the more you condition your arm, just like a marathon runner, those, what do? They run, and they run and run. They train themselves. They train themselves the right way. There's a system that they follow, but that's how they're conditioned to handle the marathon.
Yeah. What's one of the highest number of throws that you've seen recorded in a given day by a pitcher?
I would say maybe like in the 300s we've seen. I mean, that's one of the things at times coaches or athletes come back to us and they're like, I can't believe how many throws we make.
It's crazy.
It's like, it's crazy. I'm sure you've seen it, right, with your guys at times, and you probably see a big difference between individual players, right? You probably see some guys that just, for whatever reason, don't throw a lot, and then there's other guys that just love to throw.
Yeah, people forget to count. This is what I did when I got loose. I threw the ball, whether it was soft or during long toss, I threw the ball 45 or 50 times. And then I went down to the bullpen and I went through my pitching routine there. And then I come in, and then in between innings, if you start counting all those up, I mean, you could get 200, 250 in a hurry.
Yeah, and the fatigue sets in there too. If you're some teams, you get there an hour before, and if they're throwing the entire time an hour before the game starts, and then the game lasts 2-3 hours, that's insane. That's like going to the gym and lifting for 4 straight hours. That's literally what you're doing with a couple minute breaks in between. So
yeah, and especially at the youth level where your best player is your pitcher, and then he's going to play shortstop. It's because those, your level, they're just pitchers for the most part. At the little league and travel, they're going out to a position after. We had one college that actually had more position players using the sleeve than pitchers. So they found, some really interesting information and used it to, alter their schedule where they would see that they were just kind of overworking the catchers or the shortstops. One of the things they noted was first baseman made the most throws. Now, they're probably not as high in terms of intensity, but their thought was to, at times hide guys over there at first, that they wanted to limit their workload, but they didn't realize they're actually increasing the workload by putting them at first base. So that's the one thing with our product. It's not only for pitchers. Yeah, that's where the most arm injuries occur, but there's a lot of uses for it in terms of position players as well. I mean, I know for myself, going every fall as a college player, I would have, the bicep tendonitis just because you have that little bit of a shutdown in the summer, start up, infield, outfield, max effort throws, scouts are there. And, I wasn't conditioning my arm. So if I would have, paid more attention to it, had that information, I would have been in better shape. And so, position players aren't maybe having Tommy John as often. I think at the college level, it's about 20% of those Tommy Johns are position players compared to the 80% that are pitchers, which is still a pretty high number. But it's those minor arm injuries that we can potentially help prevent for those position players.
Bryan, where can they find this product and what's the price?
So the product can be found on our website at motusglobal.com or at drivelinebaseball.com. The price it's $149.99, and that's the sleeve, the sensor, and the app. And then we have a subscription for the online portion of it, which starting May 1st starts at $4.99 a month or $29 for the year.
That's awesome. There was one more thing I was going to bring up too, but I can't remember what it was. But you guys have done an amazing job. I've been really happy. 3 years ago, I never thought that we would be where we were, but this is what it was. So if you think 149, the reason why we were invested in it was, $150 per sensor. How much does it cost to get Tommy John? You're investing in these kids and help, and they trust in us to do everything we can. So, one piece of equipment, could literally change their life. So, that's why we were all in on it. And we've been, grateful to have you guys part of, UND. And I hope that a lot of people take advantage of these and, use these, especially at the youth side.
Bryan, before we let you go, how many universities or how much product is out there right now?
So we have, I would say about 20 of the major league teams use it at some level. Some of the teams are all in, where it's like every guy. Other teams are still in the process of figuring out how to manage it. So they're starting out more on the rehab side and then starting to expand it out from low A ball up. At the collegiate level, we have about, I would say, roughly 50 NCAA programs using it, they're ranging from Division I all the way to junior colleges. And then we've also, some of the major travel organizations and high school teams.
Are you seeing a lot of use from indoor facilities and pitching coaches, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's, we do have quite a few of the, kind of leading pitching instructors out there that are using it and help, prescribing to athletes. And then also we work with some of the major hospitals, HSS, some of the rehab facilities, that when guys are getting hurt, it's being recommended to those athletes. But, our goal is to try to get the sleeve in the hands before they get hurt and try to, kind of limit that.
Well, cool, man. We appreciate you coming on. We'll tag everything and once we release the video and get everybody where they need to go. We certainly appreciate stealing some of your time this morning, and hopefully we get to play baseball soon.
Yeah, no, likewise. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
All right. Thanks, Bryan.
Bryan.
Take care.
See ya.